Joining me now with more is Luria. He's head of technology research at DA Davidson, joining from Portland. Gil, it's always great to see you. And of course, as these earnings ramp up, what are your expectations?
We're going to hear a lot of lack of visibility, cloudy outlook, freezing estimates, pulling guides. We're going to hear a lot of those terms over the next few weeks. We've already started to hear companies have scenario analysis. What happens if things are okay? What happens if the economy slows down? We frankly think the ship has sailed. The economy will slow down this year. The consumer was already slowing down before DOGE, before we slowed down immigration. And now with the shock from the introduction of tariffs, any tariffs, we're likely to see a slowdown. Now, these companies have not had a lot of time to think through what that means, and they only have a very small data set of days and weeks to assess what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So they're more likely to use those types of words. Reassessing, revisiting. We'll let you know more next quarter. We're going to hear a lot of that.
Interesting. So, of course, these technology executives see their share prices down, in many cases, double digits. We had seen a report in Bloomberg over the weekend that major tech executives did cash out some of their shares here before the worst of the tariffs took hold. But these are tech executives that showed up to the inauguration, have seemingly shown support to President Donald Trump in a new way this time around than they did during his first administration. How do they toe that line in these earnings calls?
Yeah, it's very important that they don't get on the call and criticize the administration's tariff policy, even if they don't like it, even if they could talk about some of the negative consequences. These companies are all still have other dealings with the administration. Google and Meta have DOJ suits. Apple is trying to avoid the being in the crossfire between the U.S. and China. So they're going to get on these calls and talk about slowing economy, talk about the impact of tariffs. They're very unlikely to criticize the administration. They have a lot to lose.
Interesting. And in terms of companies that might stand out, no one of these technology companies is obviously identical to the other, Gil. Are there reports that you anticipate might be better or more insulated, of course, from tariffs than others?
We think Microsoft is the company that's a little more insulated than everybody else. First of all, they mostly have enterprise sales. Enterprise technology spending has already been scrutinized a lot the last couple of years. So even in a weaker economy, Microsoft's results will be more resilient. And Microsoft has already started to signal that they're going to be more rational on their investment. We've just come off a couple of years where Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, Tesla have overspent dramatically on their CapEx for an AI infrastructure and data centers. Microsoft has already started to signal that it's slowing that down. So that makes Microsoft in that group the more resilient, the more defensive of the Mag 7.
I know it is interesting because obviously consumer spending drives this economy, and for many of these businesses, consumer and business spending will drive their results as well. What is your latest read on the state of the consumer and their willingness to spend on these particular services and products?
So consumer spending, again, was already weakening before the impact of tariffs. Now consumers are seeing the value of their stocks down. Sometimes the value of their real estate is down. The prices are starting to get higher. So that's likely to be the main driver of slowdown for the balance of the year. That in turn has an impact on the ad market. So we have Google reporting this week, Meta next week. We're going to hear about that. We're also going to hear about it from Amazon. Amazon is somewhat resilient on the consumer side because they have all the categories and they're diversified across geographies. So they're going to have consumers shifting spend as opposed to eliminating spend. But it's going to ripple through all these companies. And then let's not forget that Apple sells almost entirely to consumers. And we're going to have to see what an already somewhat disappointing iPhone cycle starts looking like in a year where consumers are maybe tightening the belt a little bit.
Yeah. You know, we had seen just recently that the U.S. is stepping up its particular probes into pharmaceutical imports, into semiconductor imports as well, paving the way potentially for more tariffs. We learned of that in the middle of April. What are the outcomes there, Gil? What are the potential scenarios that could unfold?
Yes, so this is actually a matter of national security, not tariffs. This isn't about the economic relationships with these countries. These two topics, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, are a matter of national security. We do not want critical components of our key pharmaceuticals to come from other countries, especially not China. So we're going to get new policy on that. We do not want to sell our most advanced chips into China. We haven't in the past, but NVIDIA's somehow gotten away with it. The administration is cracking down on that, and that's why NVIDIA had to disclose they're going to take a $5.5 billion write-down as the administration rolls out new regulations to protect national security. This isn't about the economic tariffs. This is about national security, and so I would expect those changes around pharmaceuticals and semiconductors to happen regardless of a negotiated agreement with other countries around tariffs.
So what does that mean for NVIDIA's path forward and for the semiconductor space at large?
So NVIDIA is going to have to try to figure out if it can have any market in China. And China is probably 20 to 40% of its revenue. Can it find products to sell that the administration is going to allow it to sell? Is China going to want to continue to buy NVIDIA chips even as they have their domestic manufacturers catching up to NVIDIA? Huawei just released a generation of chips that's now maybe only 6 to 9 months behind NVIDIA's chips after being years behind. So NVIDIA is going to have to make sure that it has enough demand in the US from its large customers and from other customers that it has seeded, like NeoCloud, such as CoreWeave or Nebius.
Gil Luria, head of technology research at DA Davidson. Gil, we always appreciate your time, and thanks for waking up early on the West Coast.
Thank you.